Tigers of varied stripes. The private session in the recesses of the fanciful Regent's Park home was already well underway when finally Sir Robert Firth cared to show, characteristically smoking one of his opium-tainted cigarettes. He was at once captivated by the delicate perfume of the lilacs, mixing with the intoxicating odor of roses and women's makeup, which was, as always, dreadfully sweet. How the chaps could keep from biting was forever a mystery. Actually, no, it was not. He completely understood as to why the supposedly civilized men of London resisted the pursuit of their desires. Cowardice, which of course they called conscience. They failed to recognize that conscience was merely the trade name of the firm, as the two were precisely the same thing. How dreadful. He had just arrived and already he felt he might go. Or so he thought, until his eyes fell onto a man who seemed to be sculpted of ivory and rose petals. His coal-black hair, his incorrigible grey eyes, even his manner was purely beautiful. He was a young Narcissus, bearing none of the dreadful lines of age or deep thought upon his brow, who cared not for the exaggerated mode of intelligence others called intellect. He was a true beauty to behold. A young Adonis, whom, like the men in the church, as they in the church, they don't think. A bishop keeps on saying at the age of 80 what he was told to say when he was a boy of 18, and as a natural consequence he always looks absolutely delightful. Yet this young man, who sat on the Persian divan speaking pleasantly with the dainty ladies and gentlemen, was one who should be always there in winter when there were no flowers to look at, and always there in the summer when they wanted something to chill their intelligence. At once Sir Firth resolved he would be introduced to this boy. Indeed, he would not deny such a pleasurable meeting. He was quite fascinated to see if such a boy could live up to his godly given blessings, or if they had been squandered on him. Moving through the room, he did not make it very far, his eyes by chance falling on the fantastic shadows of birds in flight flitting across the long Tussore silk curtains that were stretched in front of the huge window, producing a kind of momentary Japanese effect, and making him think of those pallid, jade-faced painters of Tokyo who, through the medium of an art that is necessarily immobile, seek to convey the sense of swiftness and motion. Beautiful. Truly beautiful. It was undeniable that true beauty ended where an intellectual expression began. Sir Robert Firth, a pleasure, sir, to see you in attendance. Ah, yes. Sir Firth turned to see Edwin Cangleton standing before him. It was he that Firth had been appointed to meet some hours ago, so... Yes, murmured Sir Firth, his gaze sweeping the room back to the young man. Cangleton stepped nearer and turned his head to stare in the same direction. I see you have found your pursuit for the evening, Cangleton feigned a sigh. 'Tis more the shame. I had hoped to discuss Lady Agatha's latest painting. It is some of her best work. Another time, Edwin. For the moment I would inquire about the identity of that young man, if you would know it. Edwin smiled broadly. Then you should ask Lady Agatha. He is her latest discovery. Him? That is Masters, Sir Firth asked. Yes, you know the name already. Sir Firth stroked his pointed brown beard and tapped the toe of his patent leather boot with a tasselled ebony cane. Yes, she told me she discovered a wonderful young man, and that his name was Edward Masters. I am bound to state that she never told me he was good-looking. Women have no appreciation of good looks, at least good women have not. She said that he was very earnest and had a beautiful nature. I had once pictured to myself a creature with spectacles and lank hair, horribly freckled and tramping about on huge feet. Edwin smiled broadly, allowing his teeth to show, positively ivory in their colour in the light of the room. You are too unfair on Lady Agatha, but then I too would be in her black book. She and I had been to sing a duet at the Goss gathering, but I positively forgot. Ah, Edwin, such a charming viper, so beautiful were the eyes, the bite often took the intended target of their captivating qualities by surprise, which was beautiful in its own right, Sir Firth supposed. I'm sure you needn't worry. When our Lady Agatha sits down to the piano, she makes quite enough noise for two people. Edwin chuckled as Sir Firth merely smiled at his own observation. So this Masters, he is the muse of which she speaks, yes? Edwin tossed up a hand whimsically. I would suppose from the way she speaks of him. My Sir Firth, you should have heard what it was she had to say. I think we may yet have another chap to join us in our midnight soiree. And what is there to be said, then? Sir Firth leant to his right, resting his weight on his walking stick as his eyes drifted to the slowly approaching Lady Agatha. Lady Agatha smiled softly, her mood all the brighter that their attentions were now on her, and the subject of conversation, evidently, was her favourite at the time being. Why, Sir Firth, it is that he is my aunt, she began. I sometimes think, Sir Firth, that there are only two eras of any importance in the world's history. The first is the appearance of a new medium for art, and the second is the appearance of a new personality for art also. What the invention of oil painting was to the Venetians, the face of Antinous was to the late Greek sculpture, and the face of Edward Masters will some day be to me. It is not merely that I paint from him, draw from him, sketch from him. Of course, I have done all that. But he is much more to me than a model or a sitter. I won't tell you that I am dissatisfied with what I have done of him, or that his beauty is such that art cannot express it. There is nothing that art cannot express, and I know that the work I have done since I met Edward Masters is good work, is the best work of my life, but in some curious way. I wonder if you will understand me. His personality has suggested to me an entirely new manner in art, an entirely new mode of style. I see things differently. I think of them differently. I can now recreate life in a way that was hidden from me before. A dream of form in days of thought. Who is it who says that? I forget, but it is what Edward Masters has been to me. The merely visible presence of this lad, for he seems to me little more than a lad, though he is really over 20, his merely visible presence, I wonder, can you realize all that means? Unconsciously he defines for me the lines of a fresh school, a school that is to have in it all the passion of the romantic spirit, all the perfection of the spirit that is Greek. The harmony of soul and body, how much that is! We in our madness have separated the two, and have invented a realism that is vulgar, an ideality that is void. Firth, if you only knew what Edward Masters is to me! You remember that landscape of mine, for which Baudelaire offered me such a huge price, but which I would not part with? It is one of the best things I have ever done. And why is it so? Because while I was painting it, Edward Masters sat beside me. Some subtle influence passed from him to me, and for the first time in my life I saw in the plain woodland the wonder I had always looked for and always missed. So, Lady Agatha, This is extraordinary. I must meet this Masters.
No, Sir Firth, I cannot do that. You see nothing in him but the inspiration of strokes upon a canvas, whereas to me, he is utterly precious. He has consumed all my passion, and I shan't share that with anyone, so my heart might be under the lens of another in so vulgar a fashion.
Poets are not so scrupulous as you are. You know how useful passion is for publication. Nowadays, a broken heart will run to many editions. Sir Firth murmured, his gaze still fixed on the man who, risen from the divan, had begun to walk the room. The rose-kissed lips in a perpetual smile, in stark contrast with the tight and broad military uniform he wore.
"I hate them for it," cried Lady Agatha. "An artist should create beautiful things, but should put nothing of his own life into them. We live in an age when men treat art as if it were meant to be a form of autobiography. We have lost the abstract sense of beauty. Some day I will show the world what it is."
I think you are wrong, Agatha, but I won't argue with you. It is only the intellectually lost who ever argue. Perhaps you will tire soon, sooner than he will. It is a sad thing to think of, but there is no doubt that genius lasts longer than beauty. That accounts for the fact that we all take such pains to over-educate ourselves, Sir Firth began. In the wild struggle for existence, we ought to have something that endures, and so we fill our minds with rubbish and facts in the silly hopes of keeping our place. The thoroughly well-informed man, that is the modern ideal, and the mind of the thoroughly well-informed man is a dreadful thing. It is like a bric-a-brac shop, all monsters and dust, with everything priced above its proper value. I think you will tire first all the same. Some day you will look at your friend, and he will seem to you to be a little out of drawing, or you won't like his tone of colour or something. You will bitterly reproach him in your own heart, and seriously think that he has behaved very badly to you. The next time he calls, you will be perfectly cold and indifferent. It will be a great pity, for it will alter you. What you have told me is quite a romance of art, one might call it, and the worst of having a romance of any kind is that it leaves one so unromantic.
"My dear Robert," interjected Edwin, who had been patiently listening, "I have my doubts you can feel what it is Lady Agatha feels. You change too often."
That is exactly why I can feel it. Those who are faithful know only the trivial side of love. It is the faithless who know love's tragedies. Upon uttering this, Sir Firth struck a light on a dainty silver case, and began to smoke a cigarette with a self-conscious and satisfied air, as if he had summed up the world in a phrase. Edwin shook his head. "I don't agree with a single word that you have said, and, what is more, Robert, I feel sure you don't either." "How English you are, Cangleton. That is not the first time you have made that observation. If one puts forward an idea to a true Englishman, which is always a rash thing to do, he never dreams of considering whether the idea is right or wrong. The only thing he considers of any importance is whether one believes it oneself," Sir Firth then went on, saying, "Now, the value of an idea has nothing whatsoever to do with the sincerity of the man who expresses it. Indeed, the probabilities are that the more insincere the man is, the more purely intellectual the idea will be, as in that case it will not be coloured by either his wants, his desires, or his prejudices. However, I don't propose to discuss politics, sociology, or metaphysics with you.
I like persons better than principles, and I like persons with no principles better than anything else in the world." Lady Agatha pressed her fingers to the lids of her eyes, as though in an effort to imprison within them whatever dream or imaginings existed beyond the fair greens of her ever-wandering eyes.